7th of September, 2 o'clock. It's obviously a remote meeting, as you can see from people on the screens. Can I ask if there are any apologies for absence? I see there are none. Next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have your acceptance, please, that you agree them?
And I'll formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. Next item is to receive any declarations of interest. I think there may be two. Ben, will you come in, please? Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Leader. I wish to declare an interest on item 11, agenda item 11, which is the council's potential for applying for a non-determination appeal on the Maesllyn site. As a member of the planning committee that will ultimately be dealing with the outcome from this, I feel it's important that I'm not part of the decision-making process when it comes to putting in this request. Consequently, I'm actually going to be chairing that discussion, so I will leave the meeting for that item and not take part at all.
Thank you very much. And I think Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Likewise, I am a member of the planning committee, and so item 11, I will be leaving this meeting so that I'm not involved in any predetermination of that particular application.
Well, okay, what I intend to do is I will probably take 11 fairly close to the end of the agenda to make life a little easier for people dipping in and dipping out. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. No other interest, I think. The other thing is I do have three urgent references, two of which will have to be taken with the substantive report. One is in relation to the local elections principal area Wales rules and the draft election of communities. There's a reference from corporate performance. There's also a reference in relation to item 9. So the other one's reference was item 4, by the way. Item 9, and then agenda item 9 is in relation to the CJCs, and again a reference from the Corporate Performance and Resources Committee. I also have one in relation to the Local Authority Governors Panel, and what I intend to do that, I will take that fairly close to the end, under 17, where it really should be, because it's an urgent item. So if you can bear with me in relation to that, please. In relation to item 4, this is a reference which comes back from Corporate Performance and Resources Committee in relation to the Welsh Government consultation on the draft elections principal areas Wales rules 2021 and the draft local elections community Wales rules 2021. Basically, we did have this this is a pre-cabinet scrutiny report, which goes into details in relation to the report itself. It does give you all the information in relation to some of those areas which have been picked up. It does intend to bring forward some changes, namely in relation to the principal councils, that's ourselves, and the town and community councils elections, and the potential drafting changes, which I will read some of the highlights, I think, just because people need to be aware what they are. They're enabling powers for the returning officer to offer online provision for the obtaining and submission of nomination papers, requiring self-nomination by candidates for principal councils and town and community council elections in a similar way to it as in other areas, broadening the provision relating to the description of a candidate and views may use on a nomination paper, allow Wales, Welsh, Cymru or Cymraeg to be prefixed or suffixed for a political party name or descriptor, introduce requirements for the completion of the home address form with the option for the home address not to be made public or published on a ballot paper, again in relation to the same as in other elections, and the requirement for the candidate to declare on nomination papers if they are or have been members of a registered political party for the last 12 months, other than a party for which they're seeking to stand in an election, broadening the options relating to commonly used names, and finally permitting for principal council elections, that's our own, the option for candidates to provide a personal statement and arrangements for publication of the same by the returning officer. I thought I'd read those out because that gives you the pertinent areas of which the draft report looks towards. appended to the form is the consultation response form. That was considered by Corporate Performance and Resources Committee, and in general, they accepted all of the recommendations within the draft consultation document. There was one area in particular which really they highlighted on more than anything else. Although the returning officer did draw the attention to two specific issues. One is the need for the robust process and procedures coupled with a stable ICT platform, and preferably a centrally provided portal, given the potential risks to system failure. In other words, is the portal going to be with the Welsh Government or not? In the context of the strict statutory cut-off for the receipt of nominations. And then in question 9 regarding the personal statements, advising members of the suggested need for additional measures akin to those in the Police and Crime Commission's election order in 2012, and the potential conflict for the use of the Council's website for the publication of personal statements. So that would be during the pre-election period, and the associated statutory provision also highlighted. I did also make a comment in relation privately to the returning officer in relation to question 11, because one of the things in terms of question 11 was so people can be anonymous in terms of their address, except they need to put the area in which they live. And one of the things that was concerned about was how they are identified by the returning officer as being where they actually live, even though it's not going to become public. So my recommendation or my suggestion was that anybody who stands for public office should be on a register where they live anyway, and therefore if they're doing that, then they can be identified by the returning officer and not necessarily the public. The only and Scrutiny took that on board. So I think that's something we need to add into the answer to question 11. Is that inspection arrangements could still take place in person, it says, for the returning officer to identify them. And I think we should add in there, however, that any candidate should be on a register of electors where they live. So if you're happy with that, I would like to move that as one of the issues. The only other issue that was considered, and considered in quite detail in some respect, was the provision for making personal statements. And it was debated at the Scrutiny Committee, but basically what happened was that they finally agreed that they would do that. They did take a vote on it, actually. And so they recommended to Cabinet that the committee's agreement to the option for a personal statement to be provided by the candidates for principal council elections, and that the committee discussed at that time. So basically, you have before you the responses to the consultation document, with the addition of, as I said, been on the register at 11, and the issue in terms of people providing a statement. In some respects, it's in relation to principal councils, and in some respects, it's probably reasonable, because then somebody who is, say, an independent hasn't got the facility to do what some in political parties do, but they can just make a simple statement. It has to be simple. It has to be a certain number of words, and it can't make any comments or judgments against any other candidates. So I think that's probably reasonable. But it's, as I said, this is a draft. It's a consultation document, and at the end of the day, the Welsh Government will make up their own minds. So in relation to that, we're asked to consider the report and endorse the draft consultation forms, which have to be back in by the 27th of September, in other words, tomorrow, today even. Sorry, they could have been by tomorrow, I think. So on that basis, are you happy for all of the all of those comments to be added, including the one about candidates? The only one that was considered by me, and that is in relation to whether somebody has been a member of a political party in the last 12 months. In the suggested draft, it does say possibly should be 6 months, but I have no great feelings in terms of it, to be honest. So I'd leave that open to accept it as it is, unless anybody wants to change it. So Eddie, I think you want to come in, please.
Yes, Leader, but before I do, can I believe the return officer has got her hand up, so maybe she's got some point to make.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see that. Debbie.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you, Leader, for that really comprehensive run through. The only point I'd just clarify is that the way the rules read for the principal area with regard to the personal statement they are quite limited, the restrictions, and so obviously the response in Appendix A is calling upon that to be more detailed and very much in line with the PCC. The way it currently reads is the rules provide that the candidate who's putting forward a personal statement can indicate why they're standing for election. And so I've just picked up in Appendix A that they shouldn't be able to comment about other candidates. So just to clarify that point. Thank you.
I didn't make that point. And there is a specific number of words as a maximum as well. So bearing that in mind, and the fact that this is a consultation document that goes back to Welsh Government. Eddie, do you want to come in now, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And just to second all the suggestions you made and recommendations, and also recognising that, yes, the Scrutiny Committee did have a considerable discussion about most of those points, and thankfully it's, we're in a position where we can push this forward to the Welsh Government with, may I add, the return officers' inputs, certainly putting this report together in a way that we as members can understand, because there's 4 pieces of legislation there was quite considerable. I just wish recognition from that side of it.
It was indeed. So on that basis, then we accept that recommendation, and we also note the comments which came as a reference from the Scrutiny Committee. I think that's important that we reference the reference from the Scrutiny Committee. Is that agreed? Thank you. I don't know what else I could have said it. The next item is a report of meetings of the Cardiff Capital Region Regional Cabinet. They are for your attention. It did talk about things like the draft statement of accounts and the draft governance arrangements. It talked about the annual business plan, and it talks about the CCR energy strategy and implementation priorities and embracing to race to zero. It also talked about the proposal for a MIPIN event in 2022, but that's still something which needs to be finalised, I think. Basically, therefore, your information, and I would move that we note them if that's acceptable.
And formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 6, which is again minutes of the meeting held at the corporate parenting panel. I know that Councillor Gray and Councillor Williams are both there, and Councillor Gray chairs the meeting. It is for your information. I don't know whether Councillor Gray wishes or Councillor Williams wishes to raise anything in the report itself.
And I'll briefly speak to it. I should also say Councillor McCaffrey is also an attendee at corporate parenting panel.
Yes, she is.
She gave her apologies. I think it's just worth noting here at Cabinet the continuing pressures on external placements, we call it, basically finding foster homes for children. You'll note my background is Foster Wales. We've just recently launched, alongside all the other local authorities in Wales, the Foster Wales brand that started last Monday, and there are adverts and so forth in the national press that hopefully will support more people feeling that they can foster with the local authority and open up more homes for people to stay in. So actually that was the focus of our meeting most recently in September, but the pressures on finding placements and the resultant costs as a council that we will need to incur in order to find those ever decreasing availability of placements is something that corporate parenting panel are taking a particular eye to, and are very interested in seeing how we continue to work to solve those issues. But so I wanted to highlight here at Cabinet that, but otherwise the minutes are just for noting.
Thank you very much. So the minutes of the meeting, the 5th of July. So thank you. I'll formally second. Next item is another reference of the minutes of the Joint Consultative Forum, where we'll meet with our trade unions, and I know there was some issues there talking about use of pool cars and travelling as part of the pandemic, which was obviously causing issues in terms of people being able to travel about. They also talked about the update on the wellbeing surveys and modern slavery statement, which is there. I don't have anything in particular. That also talks about the update in IDEV and e-learning and the update in relation to Oracle itself. And obviously it talked about an update on the Welsh Government NHS and Social Care Recognition Scheme. But it is there for noting. If anybody wants to pick anything out of it, then please do so now. Otherwise, can I just formally move that we note the report, please?
And formally second, Leader.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 8, which is in relation to strategic collaboration working updates. As you know, this is a bit of housekeeping that we generally do. It's something we have on a regular basis. It's in relation to collaborative working activities. Obviously, they've increased at a pace since we started to do this. The compendium is at Appendix A, as always. However, what we're considering doing at the moment is to review of the compendium, and that's been undertaken because it does reflect some of the changes in the partnership arrangements. But in terms of this is something which we have on a quarterly basis, and in many ways it doesn't change a lot. So it suggested that Cabinet move from receiving quarterly updates on the collaborative working initiative to 6 monthly updates. To capture the relevant progress, but it also suggests that the progress reporting moves to by exception reporting through this the Cabinet, rather than so the Cabinet can highlight those issues which are going forward or may change, rather than just going through the compendium itself. It is, as I said, it does move away from it. It is proposed that we go to that part of the way and we deal with it. And the information and approval that are shown at Appendix 1 within the appendix as well. It is, as I said, something which we deal with on a regular basis. It shows that we are working collaboratively. So I'm going to recommend that the Cabinet notes the strategic collaborative work initiatives that are in place to support the delivery and development of council services and the council's wellbeing outcomes and objectives. The 2, that the Cabinet approves the proposals to move to exception update reporting and receive reports on a 6 monthly basis in relation to these matters. And the 3, that this report be circulated by email to all Vital Glamorgan Council elected members, clerks of town and community councils and members of the Public Service Board for their information. I don't know if anybody wants to raise anything out of this. If not, we accept the fact that we will go to 6 monthly and we'll be reporting by exception. Is that agreed? Eddie?
Yes, Leader. Thank you. I just want to emphasise the point that even though we won't get the updates through Cabinet or whatever, you know, as you said, management by exception is a good way to do it. But we are getting reports through other means. Particularly, I'm talking about the community safety one. There's a monthly update on that. So there are other avenues of us obtaining up-to-date information what's going on. So it's not a case of right, we're pushing it down the line, you know. So I just want that to be sort of noted by the rest of the members and the public.
No, I think that's a fair point, because we do have other things from places like the Public Service Board. They meet regularly. That's a very well organised machine. Community partnership, safety partnership also works. And the other thing, of course, one of the things we get through City Deal in some respects now is the issue in terms of joint corporate joint committees, and we will clearly be having to work collectively with the other authorities within our area. So there isn't a case of we're not going to know about things, because we will. And if we do it by exception, I'm sure if something something does go awry, and I don't think it will, and we can now also have an emergency report in terms of that anyway. So I think this is something we started a long time ago. It's something which we put in place. It works, and as long as we have the updates on a regular basis, I see nothing wrong with that. And apart from anything else, all the Cabinet members will be involved within all the the combinations of meetings anyway. Okay, is that agreed?
Yeah, and it's formally seconded as well.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 9, and it's in relation to, again, a draft response to the Welsh Government's consultation on corporate joint committees and the draft statutory guidance. There's also a reference from Corporate Performance and Resources in relation to this, and basically in terms of the Scrutiny Committee, they recommended that the Cabinet be requested to consider in the response the views of the Scrutiny Committee in relation to the role of the scrutiny of corporate joint committees being adequately provided for. I think it was a fair point. It is something which we has been highlighted within the agenda item itself, and it does reflect the fact that we really do need to have some good scrutiny too, because it's in a similar way to the city region. And if indeed the city region then does become the joint corporate joint committee, which I think it probably will, we need to make sure there's adequate scrutiny involved in that. As I said, the Local Government Election Wales Act provides for this through regulations. The Welsh Government has been consulting on the introduction of the regulations and guidance that will accompany it to set up the induction of CJCs over the last year or so. The report seeks endorsement of the Cabinet and of the Council's response, which is again a response document at Appendix A to the report. But obviously, clearly, consultation on further legislation, because we are still in the embryonic stage in some respects of the operation of CJCs and its functions, is planned for autumn 2021. Further consultation in the spring of 2022 will cover any remaining provisions which the CJC might need, but which are unlikely to be needed at this point, and for them to operate properly. There will be further reports in relation to this, I am sure. There has been a staged introduction to the CJCs, but as I say, it's been staged in terms of the regulations. One of the important parts in terms of the CJCs, it does form part of the local government family, and therefore it should operate in the same way as we do. The report goes into some detail in relation to that, and it does go into the draft, as I said. In relation to the draft itself, item 5, question 5 does talk about the sufficient and appropriate guidance on the governance and scrutiny within the CJCs, and I think that's the bit that Scrutiny wanted to highlight. We have talked about it before. I don't intend to say much more about it, but because it is what it is. It's a response to a consultation document. So I'm going to move that the Cabinet endorses the content of the report and the draft response to the consultation and agrees the same for submission to Welsh Government, and that we use the urgency procedure 1414 of the Council's Constitution in respect of recommendation 1, and that's because he has to get to the Welsh Government by the 4th of October. But saying that, there was pre-scrutiny in terms of this, so I'm happy that everybody's had an opportunity to consider it. I don't know if anybody's got any comments to make in relation to it, please.
Not except to second it, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. As I say, this is going along in stages, and this is just a response to the Welsh Government's opportunity to do that. Okay, thank you. Next item is item 10, which is a Strong Communities Grant Fund for 2020 to 2025, and the Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for Education. Liz, over to you, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is an update on the current round of funding that's been awarded to community groups, etc., within the Vale of Glamorgan, and it's a really super funding resource because it was specifically designed to fit in with our previous corporate plan, which was stronger communities, the whole theme of stronger communities in the Vale, and then more recently working together for a brighter future. And so what this is, if you actually look at paragraphs 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 is in paragraph 2.4, it talks about the people that are involved in the decisions, who are, as a representative town council, representative from a community council, local charitable foundation, the Waterloo Foundation, representative from third sector, and also from the Public Services Board. And there is a very thorough discussion of the awards. The eligible schemes are ones that are actually looking towards building the resilience and the capacity of organisations rather than sort of core funding. And this is, again, to build capacity to be able to provide more support and services for their local areas. The panel has awarded a total of £150,264 subject to the endorsement and agreement of Cabinet, and the details of those can be found at Appendix A, and some absolutely super initiatives have been supported on this occasion. And then appendices B and C are sort of background papers, the actual sort of application criteria, etc. So without further ado, the Cabinet recommendations are that Cabinet approves grant funding of up to £150,264, I can't say that today, and endorses the evaluation panel's recommendations as outlined in Appendix A. And also that Cabinet notes the content of this report and the two appendices, appendices B and C. So I'd so move.
Okay, thank you very much. As I say, there's a tremendous amount of work goes on, and it helps organisations outside of the council tremendously. So I will formally second. And if anybody's got any comments to make, no, we'll move on. In relation to the next item, which is item 11, and it's the Mice-Fun and Balmston report, I'm going to take that near the end. So I will skip that one for the time being, and I will go to the next item, is item 12, which is the Vale Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan for 2120 to 2036. And it's a consultation on the draft review report. I think Councillor Williams, Eddie, taking this one, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is clearly a very important report, and one that's generated quite a lot of interest in the public domain. It's regarding the local development plan. So I'll just go through following Cabinet's approval to progress with a review of the adopted local development plan in October 2020. A draft review report and a new draft delivery agreement have been prepared. And this report recommends the endorsement of these draft documents for public consultation purposes. The review report is a key part of the replacement local development plan evidence base. It sets out the key legislative, national and policy changes that have occurred since the adoption of the local development plan in 2017, and includes an assessment of the current local development plan policies to establish which ones are still effective and which policies may need to be reviewed. The new draft delivery agreement includes two key elements: a timetable setting out how the council will project manage the replacement local development plan, and a community involvement scheme, which sets out who, when, and how the council will carry out engagement and consultation during the preparation of the replacement local development plan. The report itself goes into the background of where the previous local development plan was formed, and it's been in play for some time. It was adopted in 2017. Every 4 years there's a sort of review, and we're at that place. So that's 1 to 1.4, and then 1.5 talks about the delivery agreement, which, as I said, has got two particular elements of it. And more importantly, it includes the community involvement scheme, which allows for that consultation to go on. So I'd really like to leave that for members and the public to look through, but I'll go through recommendations. That the Cabinet considers and endorses the draft review report and a draft delivery agreement, subject to consideration of any recommended changes by the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee for public consultation purposes. Number 2, that the draft review report and draft delivery agreement are referred to the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee for consideration. There are 6-week public consultations undertaken on the draft review report and draft delivery agreement. That's a follow-up report on the outcome of the public consultation, and any proposed changes is prepared and considered by the Council. That delegated authority be granted to the Head of Regeneration and Planning in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Legal, Regulatory and Planning Services to make any typographical or other minor changes as necessary prior to publication. I so move this report.
Thank you very much. Is it something which we have to do? We have to do it within a time period and before the next one starts again. So this is obviously a draft report, goes out to the consultation, and we'll see what comes back from it. So I will formally second. Thank you very much. The next item is item 13, which is animal as prizes and the release of balloons on the Vale of Glamorgan Council land. And again, I think this seeks a ban, and it's over to you, Eddie, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is something which has been in the background for some years now, particularly as I became a member, and it's something which has come to the fore now, particularly driven by the RSPCA as a campaign, and quite rightly so. So here we go. The Council has been contacted by the RSPCA in relation to implementing a ban on the giving of live animals as prizes on council-owned land. The RSPCA has provided a list of reasons why the giving of such prizes causes them concern, including animal welfare, release of unwanted prizes into the environment, and the practices surrounding such prizes. As well as considering a ban on live animals, the opportunity also arises with reference to the recently declared nature emergency to look at other practices that are potentially damaging to the environment and have occurred on council land in the past, such as the release of balloons. The Council banned the release of Chinese lanterns on its land in 2015. It is therefore recommended to ban the release of balloons. In addition, it is proposed to write to the Welsh Government to seek a national ban on all public and private land for the giving of live animals as prizes and the release of Chinese lanterns and balloons. And I suppose at that point I just need to emphasise, as much as the Council can take action on its own land, then obviously it is in a position to stop that elsewhere, hence the request to go to the Welsh Government and for a wider ban. So on that basis, then the recommendations that an outright ban on the giving of live animals as prizes in any form on Vale of Glamorgan Council land is implemented, that the release of balloons be banned on all Vale of Glamorgan Council land, and the Council write to the Welsh Government requesting an outright ban on the giving of live animals as prizes and the release of Chinese lanterns and balloons on both public and private land in Wales. As said, Chinese lanterns has already been done, but it's part of the recommendation. I so move, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that this was something which was subject to many emails in the past in relation to goldfish as prizes. So as far as I can see, this is a live animal. It may be a fish, but it'd still be live. So this also covers it in terms of live goldfish, and it goes into some respect, some detail about animal ownership, and where there were 48 cases of live animals being given as prizes in Wales. So this is one step forward. We did it with lanterns, we're doing it for balloons, and we're now doing it with live animals, including goldfish, I would add. So is there anybody got any comments in relation to that, please? No? Liz?
It was only to really welcome this, and I'm really pleased that Eddie's brought this forward. It's the whole thought of animals as prizes. There's something ad hoc about it, and no decision to have a pet should be done lightly, should be done on the spur of a moment when you're visiting a fair. And if we look at Vale land, then we don't have established fairs or things of that sort on our land, so they would be travelling fairs. which, you know, brings in all sorts of others. And similarly, in terms of the release of balloons, there's a release from our land, but where do they end up? They could end up on much of the agricultural land that we have in the Vale, but they could also end up out to sea. And I think most of us have seen the damage that can be done to marine animals in that occasion. But I think we need to say categorically, we are not saying people shouldn't have balloons at all. You know, we've got people in the Vale that make absolutely fabulous balloon creations. It's just a question of where they end up and them being used responsibly. So really support this report, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's not a ban on balloons itself, it's a ban on the release of balloons, which are filled with some substance, either hydrogen or whatever. Can I just, I don't know whether or not it should do this, but if in the recommendation it talks the outright ban and giving of live animals as prizes in any form, can we put in there just a belt and braces, including goldfish? Because people might think, somebody might be pedantic and say, well, a fish isn't an animal or something silly like that. So if we put it in there, because that was one of the ones that we were contacted about by many individuals, not only our SPCA. Sorry, it's just me being pedantic as well.
I'm tempted to agree with the Leader, but however, we'll start opening up all the other species and everything else, won't we? So, but it's in principle, isn't it, that we don't want any live creatures or whatever being given as pets due to, you know, the reasons that both of you have just given.
Yeah, no, that's fine. All right, we'll leave it as it is then. Okay, good. The next item then is again from Eddie in relation to seek approval of the 2021 Local Air Quality Management Annual Progress Report on air quality monitoring conducted in 2020 to enable submission to the Welsh Government no later than the 30th of September. Eddie, over to you, please.
Thank you, Leader. This is another one of those reports that, on the face of it, is you know, didn't think there was much to it, but clearly another important feature. You can see around the rest of the country, they've got issues. Air quality in the Vale, particularly from reading this report, we're in a really good place. So I'll just read the summary and then we'll go on. Under Section 82 of the Environment Act 1995, every local authority has an obligation to regularly review and assess air quality in their areas and to determine whether or not air quality objectives are likely to be achieved. In pursuant to this, the Council produces a local air quality management report. The report satisfies the relevant legal requirements and examines the results of air quality monitoring undertaken across the Vale of Glamorgan during 2020. A draft copy of the annual progress report needs to be approved and issued to Welsh Government no later than 30th September 2021. The report confirms that the air quality within the Vale of Glamorgan continues to meet all the relevant quality objectives. And it'd be remiss of me just to say, right, okay, let's go on to the recommendations. I do want members and the public to recognise that the work that goes into producing this report, it's over 100 pages, is extensive, it's very detailed. We spoke last year of a particular area within Penarth that no longer needed live monitoring. At the moment, we've got 51 areas being monitored around the Vale, and all of these are within the specified guidelines and whatever. So as an authority, we are monitoring. It doesn't mean that, because we haven't found anything that, that we've got any issues, because the monitoring we're doing shows that we haven't. And even with, it was reported, particularly last year with COVID, that the figures for some of the, the particulates and whatever, they have gone down. But even so, we were still within the recommended guidelines. So I do recommend this report to others. It's not just something which is unlikely. There's a lot of detail in there as well. Shows that the Vale of Glamorgan are actively monitoring air quality. So the Cabinet notes the monitored results gathered in 2020, and the Cabinet recommends the finalisation of the 2021 Annual Progress Report. Attach the Appendix 1 to this report for submission to the Welsh Government for approval. I so move.
Thank you. I think that's a fair point. It is an update report. It's a factual report. So I'm happy to second, and also knowing that we are carrying out the monitoring wherever we need to. So clearly it is a factual report. Okay, anybody else got any comments in relation to that? No? Then we come on to the next item then, which is the Barry Biomass Independent Review Report. And again, this follows on from resolution to council in February 2020. Eddie, I think you're taking this one as well, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you said, the report relates to a resolution of council on 26th February 2020 concerning the Barry Biomass Plant, which council called for an independent review of the Vale de Morgan's council determination of all planning applications related to the Barry incinerator. An independent barrister specialising in planning and environmental law, Annabelle Graham Paul, was appointed by the monitoring officer, head of legal and democratic services, on behalf of the council to undertake the independent review. Attached to Appendix 1 is the independent review report with findings summarised in paragraphs 2.2.26 of this Cabinet report, together with additional information provided at paragraph 2.7 in respect of linked matters arising post February 2020. The independent review's observations are also set out in paragraphs 2.7.9 and 2.7.10 in respect of the Welsh Government's interim decision dated 29 July 2021. Now, I know there's quite a considerable interest in this, so I'll quickly run through some of the key issues consideration. In particular, that the 2.1 reviews report dated 2021 is attached to this. It's Appendix 1, and that it was done having considered a large bundle of documents consisting of letters, emails, reports, and other written notes and materials. And the review's conclusions are summarised in 2.2 onwards. It's concluded that the council and officers acting under delegated authority not unlawfully in finding that no environmental impact assessment was required for the outline permission. Paragraph 7 to 16 of Appendix 1 sets out in detail the pertinent facts in the context of the matter and the considerations which applied. The review concludes, noting that the starting point is that the question of whether an EIA is required or not in any particular case is one of judgment of the council as a decision maker. But in considering whether the judgment was properly reached and regard to the legal requirements and the directive and regulations, and in considering documentation, there is no doubt that the screening lawfully took place and proper judgment was exercised by the council and council officers acting under delegated authority. In conclusion, the reviewer finds that the council's officers acting under delegated authority acted lawfully in finding that no EIA was required. It would have been better practice to consider the environmental effects in more detail in relation to this particular scheme, rather than place such reliance on facts of previous negative screening opinion for 2008 scheme. But whether the development ought to have been identified as a development of a national significance, the reviewer concludes that she has not seen any reference to consideration of the issue of whether development ought to have been so identified. However, the reviewer notes that the outline application was made in 2010 and the DNS regime did not come into force in Wales until March 2016. Therefore, the reviewer concludes that this was not an issue to consider at the time. On 2.4, there was some lack of progress on some of the issues, and we're aware that the council officers have been dealing with the developers through various different applications, and as we expect of our planning officers, to be dealing with the developers and resolving particular issues. It has gone through a process of trying to resolve some of the works that have gone on, and but again, the reviewer concludes that given the site is multifaceted and complex, it's nevertheless appropriate case for working with the developer rather than proceeding to enforcement during 2020, and noting that some issues do appear to have been resolved, for example, regarding water tech. So again, some people want this to happen overnight and immediate, but there's a dialogue that has to happen between the developer and the council planning officers, so that's been taking place. So if I go to finally then, the review further concludes there's no evidence that legality or maladministration in process of dealing with the applications referred to. And then it goes into a couple of other paragraphs on relevant matters that the barrister considered. So a very complex report. It's probably not what many people want to hear, but the reality is the council have undertaken the independent review as requested, and therefore recommendations that the Cabinet considers notes the independent review report attached to Appendix 1 to this report. And then this report is referred to the Scrutiny Committee, Environment and Regeneration and Planning Committee for their consideration. So moved, Leader.
Thank you very much. I think it was a comprehensive document, came from the leading barrister, and it is interesting the fact that all the points are made in 2.5, 2.6, and in relation to the findings, and also in relation to 2.7.10, where she clearly says, therefore, whether development should or should not have had an EIA historically is in the reviewer's opinion academic at this point in time, and I think that's the point that's important as well. Okay.
Sorry, can I just add that that's now gone? The Welsh Government are actually looking into that part of it as well, aren't they? That's since this report's come out.
Yeah, indeed. And that was one of the things I'm just going to mention, was the fact that this report also then looks forward, because the report obviously from the barrister was up until February 2020, but the report does lay out all those things that are happening since, and decisions by Welsh Government to carry out some more consultation. But I think it is a very comprehensive document, and I'm really pleased it's here. So I'm really happy to second it. If anybody's got any comments in relation to it, and that clearly it's gone to Scrutiny Committee for consideration. Okay, I'll agree. Good, thank you. The next item is item 16, Romilly Park Tennis Courts, and this is to advise the Cabinet of objections to the proposal to issue a lease to the Tennis Wales for the tennis courts located in Romilly Park. I think it's on to Catherine McCaffrey.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, as you've said, this is exactly what the report is in relation to. So, as you're all aware, we came to Cabinet in January in relation to advertising the possibility of the courts going to Tennis Wales on a lease. We subsequently received some objections in relation to that because of the conversation around charging for these facilities. In reality, we would have charged those facilities ourselves had it been commercially viable for us to do so. It just wasn't economic to do so. The grant that's coming from Tennis Wales and Sport Wales will fully refurbish the courts, but are conditional on Tennis Wales managing that facility. The condition of the courts is really a concern, and we would like the refurbishment to go ahead to obviously protect tennis as a future sport in Wales. Tennis Wales' motivation for investing in the courts is to encourage this usage, and they've implemented various schemes across Wales which would allow for free use at certain times. And then also just to point out that there are other areas in Barry that you can play tennis for free, irrespective of being at Romilly Park. All the funds that are generated by the courts in Romilly Park will be reinvested by Tennis Wales to maintain the courts for further tennis development in Morgan. So the recommendations that are before us today are that we note the objections received relating to the disposal of the tennis courts by way of a lease to Tennis Wales, that we've considered the objections and the reasons contained in this report, that we approve the disposal of land to Tennis Wales by the way of a 7-year lease. The authority is granted the monitoring officer, head of legal and democratic services, to execute this lease, and that a media release be produced advising of the reasons for the decision, including confirmation that free use of the tennis courts will be available at certain times, and that we will have notified the objectors of our Cabinet decision. So I would ask for Cabinet support on this today, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy to support the recommendation. Everybody agrees? Ben, trying to come in. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If you've not already formed a second, I'd like to, but I think it's really important that we note, obviously there has been a recent surge in interest in tennis, and I think it's important that we do as much as we can to support as many young people being able to access high quality provision. And it's a well used argument in the past that the level of funding we have available to directly fund certain things has been more limited due to a number of factors, and so the ability to work with partners in order to provide fantastic facilities for the community, I think that absolutely is key. And so I recognise the issues raised, but I think I wholeheartedly agree with why we're going to be proceeding, and that's why I fully support this suggestion.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And one of the issues of the point is that this will help development. This isn't just for a knock around. It's the development of those who wish to play tennis to a higher standard.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm happy, but you seconded it. That's fine. If there's no one else, nope. Good. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
next item. Item 17 is items which I've decided are urgent. As I said, I have 2 that I already picked up. I've got another 2. One is the Local Authority Governors Advisory Panel, which I will take first. There's a further one in relation to the review of the Senior Executive Leadership Team, which I will take last. And the reason I'm taking it last is because all senior members, officers have to leave before that. And in between those, I am going to take the report item 11 in relation to Myself Finnan, and I'll do that then because I know that the 2 members are going to declare an interest and leave. It gives them their opportunity to come back and for the officers to leave for the final one. It's very complicated today, but I'm sorry. So the next item is which I've decided urgent, and this is the Local Authority Governors Advisory Panel minutes and their declarations and their recommendations. And I think Liz, you're taking this one, please.
Yes, Leader, I will. And thank you for taking this as an urgent item. Having applied for these positions, it's good that the successful candidates get to hear as soon as possible, and also that the schools get to access their expertise as soon as possible, rather than waiting for a few more weeks. So this was the Local Governors Advisory Panel, which was held on the 23rd of September. Members considered a large number of applications from some really committed and talented people, and some people who've been governors for quite a number of years, serving their local school and their community into the bargain. So the appointments are laid out on page 2, trying to work out the numbering at the bottom of page 2 anyway. It
starts at 2 and goes into page 3.
Yeah, no, I was looking for a paragraph number and I'm just getting myself totally confused on it. But yeah, the suggested appointments are laid out on the table, as you said, starts page 2, goes into page 3. There are just a few schools where we didn't manage to find suitable applicants, so those will be re-advertised, and if anybody watching today feels that they would like to support those schools, then have a chat to our governors team, and they'll be able to tell you what's involved. So the recommendations before us today are basically to consider these appointments and to agree them, having regard to the applications received.
Thank you. So we're recommending that we accept the recommendations of the Governors Advisory Panel, and that we will further seek appointments for those which we haven't filled yet.
Yes,
okay.
Next round.
Good. Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Good. Thank you. Right, I'm now going to take agenda item 11, which is a request to appeal non-determination of planning application relating to Myself and Balmeston. And I think that 2 members are going to leave us for the time being, and they'll come back for the final item.
Sorry, Leader, I was just going to say on my list there's 3 urgent items in total, and another one.
I've got another one, which is the review of the Senior Executive Leadership Team, which I will take after this one, because I'm taking that last on the basis that all the officers have to leave, all the senior officers have to leave. So we will be calling you back in.
The third one is the CJCs as well.
No, we dealt with that. We dealt with that one.
Yes, I believe we have dealt with that in combination with the earlier item on the agenda.
Right, I took it. The reference I took was One, the Welsh Government consultation on the draft elections, and I also took the one in relation to the CJCs. And if you remember, in terms of the CJCs, what the Scrutiny Committee was more concerned about was making sure that we do have proper scrutiny of the CJCs.
Yeah. Apologies, all the different numbers all over the place.
I know today's a really difficult way to blend them all together, but I think this is the easiest way to do it. So as I say, what I will do now is I will take item 11, and I think that Ben and Eddie are leaving because they're members of Planning Committee, I think. And I think they have both left. This is an item from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Margaret, you want? Oops.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Can I just say, before I go into it, I am not a member of the Planning Committee anymore, so I'm allowed to speak here. This report brings to the attention of Cabinet a proposal to seek authority to appeal the non-determination or refusal as necessary of a planning application relating to Mysoffennan, Bombleston. The planning application relates to the purpose of delivering 10 homes for rent for the council. Much needed new council homes include older persons accommodation in the Wembo ward. As its meeting on the 1st September 21, Planning Committee members failed to determine the planning application and could not provide a valid planning reason to refuse the application. The matter then was deferred for a future Planning Committee for consultation. Before I go into the recommendations, can I say there is 196 people wanting to live around the Wembo area and in the Wembo ward, and this is in the Wembo ward, and all the local people got families who would like to live in that local ward. So can I now turn to the recommendations?
Yeah.
There's only one. The Cabinet Delegate authorised to the Head of Housing and Building Services or the Housing Development Programme Manager on behalf of Housing and Building Services the applicant to appeal the non-determination or refuse as necessary of the planning application related to Mysoffennan, Bombleston. Can I recommend that?
Thank you, Mysoffennan. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate that when a plan application is before a planning committee that they wish to refuse it, but they can't come up with a reason why to refuse it. And I think it is important, as you say, that this is 10 much needed council homes on a former disused, in general terms, the former disused garage site. So that is one thing.
And there is a couple of senior citizens properties there as well, and they may want to stay near their families.
Well, absolutely right. And the fact is that it's recommended that we endorse that appeal for non-determination. And I'm happy to go with that because I think that if you're in planning, it's gone to planning twice. It's gone with a recommendation for approval. It has been rejected, but with no planning reason why to reject it. If there was a planning reason to reject it, then I would look at it differently. But unfortunately, I don't. So I'm happy to recommend to second the recommendation that we consider that action. If everybody else got any comments to make, Liz.
Oops. Thank you, Leader. Yes, very, very pleased that we're taking this step. But I think I'd like to further clarify what you mentioned is that we are talking a brownfield site here, and we are talking the site of disused garages for 10 units. It's a what they call a pepper pot or pocket development within a community. I said on a brownfield site. So I think this is exactly the right action for us to take at this moment.
Okay, good. Thank you. I totally agree. There's no one else. I will second it, and if anybody's got any comments, then we agree it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, and thank the officers for the report. And the next item I'm going to bring in is the review of the senior executive leadership team. It's a reference, only a reference from corporate performance, but I will ask all the senior members, officers, to leave. And can I ask Matt if you can, our cabinet secretary, to just invite back in the two members who have just left and declared an interest in the previous item, which is Councillor Gray and Councillor Williams.
Just calling them back in now. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. And I'm just checking as well that everybody else has left, and indeed they have. Okay, this is very quick, really, in relation to this. This was a reference. If you recall, we agreed to send a recommendation to corporate performance and resources, and we asked, and then we, as a cabinet, was going to send it to the special council meeting on the 27th. But what we did ask the corporate performance report to do was that if they had any recommendations, to send it to the special council meeting. And this reference does kind of do that. So I expect that this will be referenced at council meeting. However, there was one issue in terms of this, is that during the course of the scrutiny committee, there was a member of the public who made some comments and presented her findings or considerations to the scrutiny committee. As a result of that, one of the councillors did recommend the cabinet ask to note the comments made by Mrs. Meadows in her representation, and indeed I will do that. She did make some comments, and I think at this stage we would just do as our colleagues in scrutiny asked us to do, is to note the fact that those comments were actually made and considered by the scrutiny committee at the time. So I'm going to do no more than simply advise you of the comments of the scrutiny committee, which will be going to the full council, special council, and that we note the comments that were made by the member of the public in our scrutiny committee. And I'm just going to make it as simple as that. I think that's the easiest thing for me to do. And nobody accepts that. So I second it formally, please.
And formally seconded, Leader.
Thank you very much. I think just to get on the record. I don't have any other items which are urgent under part 1, and I don't have any urgent items under part 2. So I will thank you for your perseverance in the meeting. It was a bit of a difficult one, moving things around. I think we got there in the end. So can I thank you for your time, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Leader.
Cheers.
Thank you, Leader.